I am Vinnie Tortorich, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. Folks, we've had this guy on the show once before, back at the end of 2015. We've actually played this show as part of the best of whenever I'm out of town and we need a best of show. This show has come up, but I thought it was high time we get this doctor back on one more time. I'm talking about Thomas Seyfried. Just to give you an idea, because a lot of times people say doctor and then you get them on here and they're a chiropractor or something, which, I'm not saying anything bad about chiropractors, but this guy is the real deal. He received his PhD in genetics and biochemistry from the University of Illinois, Urbana, in 1976. So he's been around for a minute. He did his undergraduate work at the University of New England, where he received the Distinguished Alumni Achievement Award. He holds a master's degree in genetics from Illinois University. So this guy is no slouch. And Thomas, let me just walk. Thomas, great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Vinny. It's nice to be here.
I could go on and on with your bio, but I think people get the idea of who you are and what you've done. And your name probably comes out of my mouth twice a week for the past 7 or 8 years, whatever it's been. And you would ask why? Why would you think about me? Why would my name come out of your mouth? Well, Dr. Seyfried, I do these consults and usually the consults are morbidly obese people or people trying to get fit to run a marathon or whatever it could be. You call me and you do a coaching consult. But at least twice a week, if not more, I get the cancer call.
Yeah.
Hey, Vinny, you beat cancer. And these are desperate people, desperate that, they just found out they've just been diagnosed with, or they've been told there's nothing else we can do for you, palliative care. Yeah, it runs the gambit. I have to tell you, I'm in tears most of the time. I'm choking back tears on my end of the line because they're talking to an idiot that grew up on a bayou as their last ditching effort. It really hurts me that this is where they are, right? And my belief, I went through chemotherapy when I had my leukemia, and I believe that chemo saved my life because here I am. Mm-hmm. But they told me with the type of leukemia I had that the remission meant that there was still leukemia cells milling around in my bone marrow. And within 5 years, it would somehow grow back, but they could keep knocking it back with chemicals. Well, as fate would have it, I went on a very low carb diet. I've been living in dietary ketosis now since 2007. And I blew right past that 5-year mark, Dr. Seyfried. As a matter of fact, I made it right through the 10-year mark. And if you do the math, we're in 2024 minus 7. I've gone, 17, 18 years of no chemo. Now, they might call me and say, look, we looked at your blood work this year and you need a touch up on the chemo. Who knows? But I've gone all this time and there's not one doctor that could give me an explanation as to why my cancer is not grown back. So let's start there and work backwards from there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, thanks. I don't know why your cancer hasn't grown back. Obviously, you're you're in long-term remission, I guess you could say. It may never grow back. I mean, it's not clear, which is good for you. I mean, let's be honest. Not all folks are so fortunate. Let's be honest about that as well. But it's hard. I can't make predictions about that. I mean, I think we have quite a few so-called millions of cancer survivors in this country and around the world who have in fact survived these standards of care, as we call them. But, and some people do really, really well, and other people survive, but they don't do so well. It's generally not healthy for the body to take in any kind of a substance that has any level of toxicity to it. I always find the human body is quite resilient. I mean, we are really capable of doing things to our bodies and have us still walking around. Especially diet and lifestyle issues. I mean, we've got an obesity epidemic and we've got all kinds of problems, diabetes and everything, and yet these folks are still alive. And there are people alive who've taken radiation and chemo and things like this. But, and some people's bodies are just absolutely resilient. But a lot of folks put themselves at risk for downstream effects, something maybe totally different than the cancer they might have had. You have bone density issues, you have neuropsychiatric problems, you got all kinds of hormonal imbalances. You can have all kinds of other issues as collateral or secondary comorbidities as the result of beating up on cancer. So the answer to your question is you're fortunate, and listen, that's what we can say. And you may live, if you live to be 95 years old, die from a heart attack, then you were cured from cancer.
Yeah.
But we don't know that until many, many more years.
Well, let's hope that, in my case at least, that it is many, many more years. I'm only 61. I'm hoping to go a bit longer.
Oh yeah.
How did I've read your stuff in the past. You've called cancer a mitochondrial and metabolic disease rather than a genetic disease. What do you mean by that?
Well, there's a theory of disease. Okay, there's theories of disease. If you look at Louis Pasteur, he claimed that disease was caused by invisible microbes. The contrary explanation was bad air. It was like Galen said, no, disease comes, Galen, an ancient a physician from the Greek and Roman times, said that all diseases came from bad air. Where Louis Pasteur did experiments and said, no, there is disease coming from these invisible microbes, viruses and bacteria and these kinds of things. He didn't know too much about viruses, but he certainly could understand that microorganisms were responsible for the disease. So then we have the germ theory of disease as opposed to the bad air theory of disease. The current situation right now in the cancer field is that cancer is a genetic disease. If you go to the National Cancer Institute website, the NCI website, it says cancer is a genetic disease caused by somatic mutations that occur in cells of our tissues and organs, leading to dysregulated cell growth. So the definition of cancer is dysregulated cell growth or cell growth out of control. That's the definition of cancer. The theory that says what causes cells to grow out of control is the somatic mutation theory, that mutations in the DNA that control the regulation of the cell cycle are responsible for this dysregulated cell growth. The alternative theory, which is the one we support and the one that Otto Warburg originally defined, was that cancer arises as an effect of the damage to our energy-producing organelle in the cell, the organelle that makes energy from oxygen. And we and others have shown that when that organelle becomes chronically corrupted, it leads to these reactive oxygen species, ROS, that are carcinogenic and mutagenic. They damage DNA, they damage proteins, they damage lipids. So the mutations in the nucleus are not the cause of cancer, but an effect of the damage to respiration. So this is two totally different explanations for the same phenomenon. In one theory, the somatic mutation theory, which is supported by all major medical schools and the National Cancer Institute, is that the dysregulated growth, cancer, is caused by mutations in the DNA of the nucleus of the cell. The mitochondrial metabolic theory says no, that's not true. The mutations are secondary downstream effects of the disruption, oxidative phosphorylation. So So this is the alternative two views of the origin of cancer. Let me push this thing down a little bit further. So we have two alternative views for the same phenomenon. And in my view, if it's a mitochondrial metabolic disease, that means people can take charge and essentially participate in the management of their disorder, because the tumor cell, having defect in generating energy from oxygen, falls back on ancient fermentation pathways, which is energy without oxygen. Like all cells on the planet used energy without oxygen before oxygen came into the atmosphere in the early development of life on Earth. So these cancer cells are essentially falling back on ancient pathways of fermentation. And then you say, well, what does that mean? Well, what do they use to get energy? And energy is everything. Listen, without energy, we die quick. And you want to know how fast that is? People who drink Kool-Aid laced with cyanide, drinking the Kool-Aid laced with cyanide, Jonestown, everybody was dead instantly, very quickly. Okay, that's what happens when you have no energy. Cancer cells can live in hypoxia. They can live in cyanide. They don't need that form of energy. They ferment. They use ancient pathways of energy, and those driven by the sugar glucose and the amino acid glutamine. So the solution, or a strategy, an effective, I don't want to say solution, but it's certainly an effective strategy for cancer management, involves transitioning the whole body over to a respiratory fuel like fatty acids or ketones, and then selectively targeting the glucose and the glutamine, thereby protecting the normal cells while we starve and marginalize the tumor cells, and the body will gradually eliminate them from the body. Now, yeah, sure, you can use radiation and chemo and all this other stuff, which will certainly kill cancer cells, as you're an example of that, a survivor. But you can also kill them by taking away their fermentable fuels. And blood cancers are remarkably dependent on glutamine, and glucose. So all cancer, we can't find any tumor that can use oxygen for energy sufficiently. So they're all essentially dependent on this fermentation metabolism. And the theory that describes that is called the mitochondrial metabolic theory of cancer, as opposed to the somatic mutation theory. These are two radically different ways of looking at the same problem.
Okay, so let's break down both. Let's take their approach first. Mm-hmm. Obviously there's been a lot of studies, so they didn't just pull it out of thin air.
No.
So just being devil's advocate, why do they believe, or why do they look at the studies they look at and believe those studies?
Because when you look at cancers, you find all of these mutations in the DNA. And a lot of these mutations are thought to be responsible for how cells grow. And but the interesting thing is, every cell in a tumor has a whole different constellation of mutations. No two cells in a tumor with tens of millions of cells in this tumor, no two cells in that tumor have the identical genetic problems. They all have different kinds of mutations. But every cell in that tumor is dependent on a fermentation metabolism, regardless of what the genes say. Also, you can test the hypothesis very, very convincingly, which has been done by a number of investigators in the field, where they take the nucleus out of the tumor cell with all of the mutations in that nucleus, the driver mutations and all the different genetic defects that are supposed to be responsible for dysregulated cell growth. And then you take that nucleus and then put it into a new cytoplasm with normal mitochondrial function, and the cell returns to a growth-regulated state. It's not dysregulated anymore. Okay? And then the opposite experiments were done, where you take the nucleus of a normal cell and you put it into the cytoplasm of a tumor cell. And what was found is you get a high incidence of now cells that have dysregulated growth, despite starting their journey with a normal nucleus. So clearly, and this was done both in the culture dish as well as in vivo animals, by some of the best developmental biologists known in our scientific field, leaders in the field of biology, were showing these same results. We also now find those who think cancer is a genetic disease have two kinds of mutations: the passenger that doesn't seem to do much, and the so-called driver mutation, which seems to be driving the dysregulated growth. So what we're finding now is that some cancer cells under deep investigation have no mutations at all. And now we're beginning to see all of these so-called driver mutations in normal cells and tissues that never become cancer. So when you put all these facts together, it becomes hard to even, if you have a rational thinking mind, it becomes extremely difficult to explain these phenomena based on on a somatic mutation theory. It just the science just doesn't hold up supporting that. Where we clearly show that all cancer cells are fermenters. We haven't yet to find any tumor cell that can grow without glucose and glutamine. So the question then becomes, do you want to spend hundreds of millions and billions of dollars trying to target various mutations in people's tumors with the hope that you might hit the jackpot and kill all the tumor cells? Or would you just like to pull the plug on their two fermentable fuels and kill all of them gradually at the same over time? And I think and that's the difference between how you view the disease based on the two different theories. And once the field comes to understand that cancer is a mitochondrial metabolic disorder, the approaches for cancer management will be far less toxic, much more cost effective, and much more therapeutically beneficial. I think this will be the eventual way we'll manage cancer. It's a mitochondrial metabolic disease. And if we selectively target the two fuels while transitioning the body over to non-fermentable fuels like fatty acids and ketones, I think we're going to see a gradual removal of tumors. Will it cure cancer? I have no clue. Will it keep people alive longer with a higher quality of life? Yes, this is what we're seeing. When we could get those folks to do the right, we're seeing tremendous, much longer term survival with a much higher quality of life. No hair loss, no bleeding gums, no nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, all this kind of stuff. So your body we're using the body as a natural mechanism, a machine to ferret out and remove the tumor cells through a natural healing process, given the opportunity. You have to give the body the opportunity to do this by using diet and drugs that will target the fermentation metabolism. And then you begin to see gradual disappearance of the tumor. Does it go away completely? No. For some folks, it just grows real slow. And then periodically they have a surgical procedure and remove some of it. Another several years go by, they'll go through it again. But these people are alive with what we call terminal cancers. They should have been dead years ago and they're still alive. So I look at that as success. I don't say it's a cure, but I certainly say it's an effective management. And then there are some people who are like yourself, where it goes away completely. And they're wondering at what time will it come back? And the answer is we don't know.
Yeah, look, I'm not rushing for it to come back. Like I said, I'm just running for my yearly blood test, and I see my doctor this week.
Yeah.
So this is a timely conversation. And, they'll let me know when it's time to go in for another bone marrow biopsy because they can look at different markers in the blood. And every year I kind of walk in and I'm squinting and going, are they going to here? And especially on year 5 and year 6 and I'm like, tell me this.
It's always something like looking over your shoulder. It's like it's kind of a threat to yourself. You fear, like no one wants to go to the doctor. You're feeling good. You look great. And you go there and have this guy tell you, oh, we see the cancer coming back again. Oh, then it makes your whole not a good day. Right. But then you leave and the guy said, no, I don't see anything. And then you get really happy and excited and you feel good for another several years.
You get to live for another
and you keep going through this whole cycle over and over again. And that's what I said. So, but the idea about metabolic therapy is that even if you were to have a recurrence, it still does not prevent you from tackling the problem using metabolic therapy or some combination of drug with metabolic therapy. We have seen some successes with very low dose chemo under metabolic stress of the body, kills the tumor cell. So the drugs work better at a lower dose, more effectively, and you don't have to suffer the collateral damage that a lot of other folks have to do.
Well, that's what I'm really hoping. That's my dream. they told me I had so much leukemia running through my bone marrow that, I had to take all kinds of other drugs to stay alive
Yeah.
while they were trying to kill the cancer, which some of those drugs had more side effects than
Mm,
even the chemo. And
right.
my feeling is, well, next time maybe they can just give me a touch of the chemo because I'm going
Yeah.
to keep eating, a very low carb ketogenic
Yeah.
style diet, and I'm
Well,
gonna be,
that puts a lot of. It's hard to grow cancer when the fuel for it to grow is limited.
yeah.
It's just that simple. But the thing that we found, which Otto Warburg did not know about, was that there was a second fermentable fuel, which is the amino acid glutamine, and that most people thought was a respiratory fuel. And normal cells, it can be a respiratory cell fuel, but in the cancer cell, it's a fermentable fuel. So you can target the glutamine. You need drugs for that, but exercise can bring it down to some extent. But the better option is to use certain low dose drugs that will specifically target the glutamine glutaminolysis pathway.
Let's talk about glutamine for just a second. I don't want to get too far in the weeds because I like keeping it on a level where anyone can understand this. L-glutamine is a breakdown of an amino acid. It's a part of an amino acid.
Oh, it is the amino acid. It's the
Right.
breakdown of a protein, but glutamine is an amino acid.
So you have an amino acid that is found in animal products. I mean,
Yeah.
in eggs and whatever. How do we keep glutamine at a low level if we have to eat protein every day?
Well, it's a non-essential amino acid, and but it's essential for cancer. So some cancers respond more; they're more dependent on glutamine than other cancers. So you have to recognize that. We're doing those tests right now. Don't forget, you also have to realize that glutamine is the singular most abundant amino acid circulating in our bloodstream, much higher concentration than any other amino acid. And that's because our immune cells use glutamine to kill microbes that enter our body. Also, our gut, the cells and health of our microbiome and gut is heavily dependent on glutamine. The urea cycle, glutamine plays a tremendous role in the urea cycle. So this is an essential amino acid for a lot of things. They call it non-essential because we could actually synthesize it from glucose. So it's not like you have to have it. It can be produced internally from other metabolites. But for cancer, yeah, it's a double-edged sword. But that's why we developed the press pulse therapeutic strategy. We can press down glucose really well as long as we can elevate ketone bodies and fatty acids. But then we have to strategically pulse and target glutamine. Because if we're too aggressive with targeting glutamine, we can harm the gut or we can harm the immune system or something like this. So again, you have a great tool, but you got to know how to use it in the right context to maximize its therapeutic efficacy. And if you don't know that, then you could potentially do harm and reduce the opportunity to do a lot better with these therapies. So again, you have to have some knowledge base. And we've published these papers to give physicians an opportunity to work out some of the ideas they might have. And exercise will lower glutamine as well, but it won't go down low enough to really start killing tumor cells. That's why you sprinkle a little bit 6-deoxynorlucine, a little embendazole, and some of these other drugs that we're now beginning to realize they're pushers on the glutamine thing. But you got to do it in a way you don't want to harm your immune system or your gut. So again, it's like anything. You really need to know the concepts and how to use the tools that you have.
With that in mind, we're going to take a quick break here. But when I come back, I want to get into what a diet and a supplement program might look like to keep cancer at bay. Before we do that, folks, olive oil. Olive oil. Listen, we're talking about eating healthy. A lot of the olive oil in this country, at least the big box, the Bertolli and some of these olive oils, they're cut up to 40% with seed oils, and our FDA allows them to legally do that. And then once you cut olive oil that much, it doesn't look much like olive oil, so they have to add a colorant back in. And it doesn't smell much like olive oil, so they have to put this odor back, a perfume into it to make it look and smell like olive oil. Meanwhile, you have a big old gut full of seed oil. Well, you don't want that to happen. There's a lot of good brands out there, but the one I like to recommend because, I don't know, they write me a check every month is Villa Capelli. They've been a sponsor of this podcast for well over 11 years. Villa Capelli, we found this company. I love their product, and it's not just about being a healthy olive oil. It almost tastes like a salad dressing all on its own. It's amazing how good this oil is. You guys have seen me right here on the show. I'll chug an ounce of it at a time. I'm a big olive oil fan. I hope that Dr. Seyfried doesn't come back and tell us that olive oil is bad for us in some way, shape, or form. But big fan here. Been using Villa Capelli for 11 years now. Go give it a shot, literally. Put in promo code Vinnie, Vinnie. Now, listen, they may be out of the 3-liter tins right now, but put your name in. And when that olive oil, look, they're not going to just sell any kind of crappy oil. They're not going to buy it out of Spain or anywhere else. You got to wait for them to crush the trees have to bear the fruit, and then they have to crush the fruit, and then they have to get the oil. And that takes a bit of time. So if they don't have what you want in stock, put your name in. But whenever you get your oil, put in promo code Vinnie, Vinnie, and you'll get 10% off. If you spend more than $125, you'll also get free shipping. So go check that out. We're talking to Dr. Thomas Seyfried. Thomas, people are sitting there going, okay, I have a touch of cancer. I have this problem. I have that problem. What does the diet look like? And are there any supplements we should be looking into in order to keep cancer at bay?
Well, this is a good point, Vinny. I tell you, because there's so much confusion about diets, and this is one of the reasons why the medical establishment has always steered clear from diets. They're not formulated in a way that can be generally used for most people. It's always ambiguous. What's in a diet? What are you eating? How much you're eating this and that. That's why we developed the glucose ketone index calculator, which measures the ratio in millimolar in the blood for the sugar glucose and the ketone body. So as you stop eating or do keto or water-only fasting or these kinds of things, your blood sugar naturally will go down because you're not eating anything. Insulin levels go down because they don't see glucose in your bloodstream. So blood sugar goes down. And if you continue to do this, ketones go up, and where they come from, your fat cells start to release fatty acids into the bloodstream, and those fatty acids from your adipose tissue go to the liver, and the liver chops them up. So the fatty acid's a long carbon-hydrogen molecule, and it chops them up like putting branches into a wood chopper, and they make water-soluble ketone bodies, which can replace now glucose for the brain and other organs. Muscle and heart and things like this. So as you slowly lower your blood sugar through diet, water-only fasting, or something like this, your ketones slowly come up, and you get this ratio of blood glucose to blood ketones in a millimolar ratio. And we have published that if you have cancer and you can get your GKI, glucose ketone index, to about 2.0 or below, now you're putting tremendous pressure on tumor cells. Now, you can achieve that by that low. If somebody were a pescatarian or a vegan or a carnivore or a Mediterranean guy, whatever you want to, you would continue to eat what you thought was a good diet, and the blood work will tell you whether or not it is. So people always ask me, can I eat that? He never said what you should eat or not. Just get your GKI 2.0 and below, and you'll know what you can or cannot eat. And this is very different from one person to the next. So it's hard. If a guy's a vegan, he needs to, eat the vegetables that are going to bring it the lowest glucose, and let the ketones rise. And so it varies from one person to the next. Everybody does their normal diet, and then the meter, the glucose ketone index meter, the Keto Mojo or whatever you're using to measure this, will tell you whether or not you can eat whatever. So I don't want to make it a diet specific. Obviously, low carbohydrate things would obviously be important. You're not going to get a low GKI pound and jelly donuts, pizza pie, and this kind of stuff. But you certainly can get it on vegetables that have low glycemic vegetables or meat or a variety of these kinds of things. And each person will know what they can and cannot eat. I told you the ratio, it's 2.0 below. And if you have a cancer in your body, it's going to start to suffer and up and die when you get into those ratios. Then you sprinkle in a little bit of, target a little bit of glutamine with a drug like embendazole or Don, and you start to do this. Now, supplements, any supplement that will not raise glucose or ketone or reduce ketones can be okay. People use these things. I used to say, well, I'm taking this supplement. What does it do to your GKI? Well, I never tested it. Test it and see what it does to your GKI. If it doesn't raise your GKI, then you should be able to take it. So if it doesn't have any toxicity associated with it. So there's a number of supplements out there that people take and they can recommend them, berberine and things like this. Try it. I mean, that's what I would say. We always bring everybody down at the ground zero and then add back things and see what they can or cannot. It's like you're your own experiment. Each person is their own experiment. They have to test their own body to determine what they can or cannot eat, or what supplement might be beneficial to them.
Explain to me just a little more about GKI. Now, I test my blood all the time, and my millimolars are anywhere between 0.7 in the morning when I wake up, and usually they run between 1.2 and 1.5 during the day. If I do a hard effort for several hours in a kayak or hiking or a rowboat.
Well, wait. We're not going to get blood sugar at 0.7 millimolar. That's the lowest I've ever seen by any human was point.
No, but that's what I'm asking about the GKI. I'm talking about the ketones in the blood.
Oh, you're talking about the ratio. You have to get the ratio from the Keto Mojo or Precision Extra, one of these meters.
All right, so I have a Precision Extra. Tell me what to do to figure it out.
Okay, so Keto Mojo, we published the you got to convert because the glucose is given in milligrams per deciliter.
That's right.
And you have to convert that to millimolar by dividing that number by 18. And for a lot of folks, that's like, oh my God, I got to learn math to do all this stuff. It's like, give me a break. But the Keto Mojo already has the you push the button and it instantly gives you the ratio. So that meter might be more user friendly than having to sit with a pencil and paper to divide your deciliter by millimolar. So by 18, I should say, and to get your glucose millimolar value. So Keto Mojo will do it all for you, and you buy it on Amazon. You got the consumables, the strips. I understand, like they have the free Libra now. That's an interesting device. That's and they're going to start selling that over the counter, where you can measure your blood sugar in real time,
Right.
and you can. The problem is there's no free Libra for ketone yet, but people are telling me there's some of these new technologies will be coming in the future. So once you would have that, but right now the Mojo meter is probably the best bet. It calculates it all for you. You buy it on Amazon. It's not that expensive. Where you get always the expenses are in the consumables, the glucose ketone strips. But we do urine strips can measure ketones as well, and you can use those in intermediate base because the ketone strips are a little bit more expensive than glucose strips. So the issue here, of course, is that people can and they can record the log. They can log it into their daily routine. What time of the day they have the lowest GKI. So it varies during the course of a day. So people get to know how their body responds over a course of a day from the foods they ate, the activity they have, and then they get to know what's the best time. Now, once you're in the low GKI, that's when we use the glutamine targeting and other supplements and drugs like this. Low doses, of course, always, and make sure it never raises the GKI. So again, now what I'm telling you is not known by the majority of oncologists or even physicians.
Right.
Not understood. When you think cancer is a genetic disease, you don't think about any of this stuff that I just told you. You're using targeted therapies, immunotherapies, and these kinds of things. It's very interesting. I find out when people say, "Oh, my immunotherapy, I spent all this money," and they said it's not working because my tumor is so acidic that the immunotherapy or the chemotherapy or the radiation therapy is not working. And the answer is because the acidity is coming from the metabolism of the glucose and glutamine. So if I get rid of the glucose and the glutamine, you get rid of the acidity, and now all these other things start working a little bit better. If people really understood the biology of the disorder, they wouldn't think it is as complicated and mysterious as it actually is. It's not that. You just need to know what they think is so complicated and so difficult is not that complicated, and it can be managed effectively when you know how to do the things that I've just mentioned.
Yeah, it is. When you listen to what they have to say, it's very interesting. I had a friend whose sister got breast cancer, and she has the BRCA gene, right? So the
Yeah.
doctor's like, oh, you got to get your other two sisters in here, and they were scaring these women into, oh, you should have your uterus removed and chop your breast off and do all this other stuff. And my friend came to me and says, what do you think? It's like, well, are you healthy? Are you healthy right now? Yeah. Do you have any of the symptoms of no? It's like, and you're going to go rip your uterus out and go have your breast removed? I would tell you if your sister has the BRCA gene, maybe you should go in for a test every so often, but I don't think you have to go under the knife because your sister is sick.
Yeah.
But that's what
No.
medicine is.
Yeah, no, it's a fear. It's the fear. And I know the famous Angelina Jolie, the actress, she made that kind of like a strategy, getting your breasts removed prophylactically. So even if you have this BRCA gene and you eliminate the tissue where the gene is expressed, you have to realize we did a real thorough investigation of all these so-called, these are germline risk factors. They're not somatic mutations. They're germline mutations, BRCA1, Li-Fraumeni, P53. There's a variety of other of these kinds of we call them inherited risk factors, but none of them are primary. They're all secondary. You see, to have a primary risk factor for getting a disease, every person with that disease has to have that linkage. It's the cause. Like, for example, Huntington's disease.
Right.
Anyone that inherits the gene, the mutation in the protein huntingtin, will always have, at some point in their life, they will get Huntington's disease. The primary cause of Huntington's disease is a mutation in the protein called huntingtin. In cancer, a BRCA1 has so in other words, the Huntington's disease is 100% penetrant. Therefore, it's the primary cause. BRCA1 is about 55% penetrant. That means about 45% of women that have this gene will never experience a cancer as the result of this. It's not 100% penetrant. And that we don't really know why some women have the mutation and never develop a cancer, because there's something that's blocking this gene from initiating cancer. And what we found in every woman that has the BRCA1 that does get cancer, the mitochondria are abnormal, producing a fermentation metabolism. So why the BRCA1 would disrupt mitochondria in one woman, making a risk for cancer, and another woman have the same mutation and doesn't. So that means BRCA1 can be modified. It can be modified in its level of expressivity. So again, I think what you said is absolutely correct. I think if you are diagnosed with the BRCA1, yes, you can have your breasts and ovaries and these kinds of things removed, or you might want to consider going into a Paleolithic kind of diet and lifestyle, where you're not going to be able to get cancer if the damn sugar driving the dysregulated growth is not there in any great amount. And if there was a tumor that would arise under these environmental conditions, then you can probably have it debulked with a lumpectomy or something small. You won't have to have what we call surgical mutilation of your body, trying to upfront whether you're going to have this or not. I think there are options. Once you realize that cancer is a metabolic disease, then you have different options to deal with the problem. You should at least be aware of these other options rather than just going out and just, as you said, being surgically mutilated. If the patients knew there was another option based on the biology of the disorder, I think a lot of people might say, I might take the risk. And if it comes, I know what to do. And if I have it and I have to have and there's another thing that's really weird. Of all the studies that have been done with radical mastectomy, versus lumpectomy. There's no statistical significance in long-term overall survival whether you have a lumpectomy or a radical mastectomy. There's been over and over and over, dozens of experiments have shown this, and yet so many women are surgically mutilated, having their breasts, one or two breasts removed, when there's no evidence to say that's going to give you any longer survival than a lumpectomy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I hear this all the time, not just with cancer, but with type 1 diabetics and everything else. They'll tell the parent, well, let your kid eat whatever they want because they could just take this fast-acting insulin and, take care of the sugar. And if the person says to the doctor, but what if my kid just ate less sugar? The doctor will actually tell them, why put your kid through that? Let them live a normal kid's lifestyle. And I'm sitting there going, a normal lifestyle just left the room when you found out you had juvenile diabetes, right?
Yeah.
But the doctor's going,
that would be
all the sugar and cake and Cokes, just let them have it. You could just hit them with this fast insulin. It's the same thing with, I would say the same thing probably happens with, the total mastectomy and pulling out the plumbing and the whole thing, where these doctors are going, why change your lifestyle? We can just mutilate you and then you can go have chocolate cake next week and you'll be fine. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
That makes no sense to me either. And I think you're mostly talking about type 2 diabetes, which is a diet and lifestyle issue.
Well, yeah, no. Let me be very clear on that, doctor. With type 2, yes, we cause type 2 because of diet and lifestyle. But there's a movie out there, and my friend did the movie. She has a type 1 kid, and what they found out was with type 1 kids, of course, you're not going to get rid of it with diet and lifestyle. You can't get rid of it. But what they found out is instead of putting them on this high-priced, fast-acting insulin, if you just keep them off of sugar, you can use the old style, which almost costs nothing per month. It's just a very, very inexpensive drug. It's the old-timey, slow-acting insulin that can just keep them even keeled all the time if you just keep their sugar low. I didn't mean to misspeak about the difference between type.
No, that makes perfect sense because that's certainly a strategy that seems to work for a lot of folks. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, type 1 diabetics really are dependent on insulin because they can't make insulin, whereas the type 2 diabetic can make insulin, but they become insensitive to it because of their diet and lifestyle. And a child that would be overweight, every time you see a child that is obese, that poor soul is unlikely to live as long on the planet as some others. And people don't realize diabetes type 2 has replaced smoking as the number one risk factor for cancer.
Yeah.
So it's unbelievable. And I don't think people know that. I don't know how people don't recognize that being obese is a massive risk factor for your health. And you don't live. People say, oh, geez, if I make it to 50 or 60, I'm doing really, really good. Yeah, but you're linking your dementia, cancer, all kinds of other chronic diseases are linked to that. And your quality of life, oh yeah, if you're 10 or 14 and 15 into the 20s, because your body is so young and so resilient. But you keep that up, and all of a sudden, man, you are one hurting buckaroo. And you're not going to live on this planet as long as others. Already known that. I mean, we've seen that. It reduces lifespan. So, and you can get cancer and die. I mean, and dementia. That's another. People don't understand these diet and lifestyles put them at risk for dementia as well. So, but I look at it, and because we have an obesity epidemic that's worse around the world, apparently people either don't know or they don't care. So what are you going to do? I mean, they should know. I mean, I can't go around saying, putting up a flag. I know this stuff, and people should know if they have some level of scientific literacy. They should know this is not healthy. They should know that a little kid that is morbidly obese, he's at risk for all kinds of health issues that other kids that are fit and not obese are less likely to have.
Yeah, friends of the show, Gary Taubes, who was on just a couple of weeks ago again, and Nina Teichos, who've spent time here at my house, we talk about this type of thing. And when we feel like when we start making ground on the subject of, hey, you'll be better off eating real food, eating real wholesome food, eating animal protein, and you start winning that argument because you start seeing people lose weight, reverse their type 2 diabetes, get rid of a lot of metabolic syndrome or syndromes. Then the next thing they do is they go, well, okay, but it's bad for the environment. It's like, okay, well, now you're moving the goalposts. You were telling us that this will not help a person. We're showing that it will help someone get healthier. So you move the goalposts and go, well, a cow just farted, and I think the ozone layer is going to crash. So you can't win.
That's kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
You're talking about, but on the other hand, you have to realize that eating healthy foods is sometimes harder to get than cheap, highly processed carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And it's also an economic issue. Some of these, organic foods are more costly. They don't have a shelf life for sure, and a lot of folks living paycheck to paycheck sometimes don't have that. And you're working all day long. You're sitting in traffic. You're all stressed out. You come home, and you throw something into the microwave or something quick, so just so you can relax on the chair and watch some programming. You're just like, so you got stress. So all of these things are what we call diet and lifestyle: lack of exercise, convenience, poorly nutritious foods, and you put all that together, and that's the result of our highly efficient technology that we have developed over the last 100 years. So all of these things come into action. It's a diet and lifestyle issue. It's not only putting us at risk for cancer, but all the other things that we've just spoken about, type 2 diabetes, macular degeneration, dementia, all of these things, making your life less robust. And but the convenience factor, I'll tell you, it's just so powerful. Cost, financial and convenience, low cost and convenience seem to trump or overshadow health and these kinds of things. So, I don't know what to say. I'm not here to talk about that. People can speculate and do all this stuff. I work to try to manage cancer through strategies that I understand the biology of the disorder, and therefore I think we can make huge progress in dropping the death rate by as much as 50% in 10 years by knowing the biology of the disorder. And by the way, the people that do this also get very, very healthy in other ways. Sometimes the diabetes, the hypertension, the high blood pressure, all of these other things seem to go away along with the cancer. So, and we're seeing this over and over again for some of these folks, that like Guy Tannenbaum. He's on the web telling everybody how he got rid of almost everything besides his terminal prostate cancer.
Yeah.
So this is the strategy. People can do what they want to do. My view is like they should at least have a choice, or at least should be told about some of this, rather than not being told or saying, oh, there's no evidence to support anything we're saying. There's massive evidence. Just the problem is people don't read the literature and understand. Either they don't read it or they don't understand it. What can anybody do about that?
You can't do anything about it. I've been talking till I'm blue in the face for, we've done 2,500 podcasts here over the past 12 years. And, you can't make people do anything, and, whenever people write to me and say, hey, you've saved my life, because I get guys like you on, they think I'm saving. It's like, no, I didn't do anything. And the doctor I had on, he didn't do anything. You took a suggestion and you did the hard work, right?
Yeah.
And to answer what you were saying about, food costing too much might be true. But look, we've done all these things to make our lives easier. So you can certainly come home and at least cook hamburger meat, and anyone can afford eggs. And I get it. Eggs have doubled in price, but they're still cheap. And the bottom line is that we can't afford not to eat correctly. We can't afford to mess around and eat junk food from a microwave and everything else. And by the way, if the government wanted to get serious about it, they're sitting there subsidizing sugar and they're subsidizing wheat and grains and everything else. Subsidize meat, but that's not what they're doing. they're going after meat. You go to New York, they're doing meatless Mondays, and in California, no meat Friday and vegan Wednesday and everything else is going in the wrong direction. We're still going in the wrong direction. That pendulum has not swung back into the positive yet. It's the way I feel, at least.
No, that's true. I think you have a lot to be said. I think a knowledge distribution of knowledge give people the opportunity to make choices, and the physicians, many of them need to be re-educated. The people need to be educated to know enough, and I think a lot of them do. I think a lot of them know they're eating bad stuff, but it's so tasty and so convenient and so cheap. Let's just keep with it. And it's like smoking cigarettes in the past.
Yeah.
You know how many people, everybody was smoking, not everybody, but so many people in the population with it, and they're rolling the dice. I'm not going to be the one getting the cancer. I'm not going to be the one getting the heart disease. And yet they would have a heart attack.
Yeah.
They were addicted. And don't forget that the highly processed carbohydrate foods are addicting. Just like nicotine and caffeine and all these other things. Glucose addiction is an extremely powerful force on the brain. Anybody who doesn't believe me, try stop eating for 3 or 4 days. Just drink water. See what happens. You're going to be really you're going to have withdrawal symptoms. And so that just goes to show you the power of glucose on the brain. And it's an addicting substance. But once you can break that addiction to glucose, you can. Even myself. I enjoy sugar every now and then. I try to avoid it. But if I had cancer, man, I tell you, I would avoid it like the plague. There's no question about it.
I look at sugar as if it's a rattlesnake, and I'm a sugarholic. It was tough for me, and I've actually spoken to ex-junkies, people that were on heroin, cocaine problems, the whole thing. And they'll tell you, sugar was as tough, if not tougher than heroin.
Oh.
And I'll say, how can that possibly be? Heroin is such a strong drug. And they'll say, because you can get sugar everywhere, every day. It's all around you. You could just reach for it. It's right there. For me to get heroin, I would have to go down the street corner somewhere and meet my guy, right? And get stuff. And, so they're right, or as I told Dr. Drew once, he was telling me that, well, sugar is not really as bad as cocaine. And I said, yeah, but we're not giving cocaine to children at birthday parties. That's the big difference.
Well, as I said, if you don't think it's so bad, try going without it for 3 or 4 days. You'll come to know.
Yeah, it's a real thing. I don't want to keep you forever, Thomas. You're so kind to come back on and to do this because, like I said, people write to me and I talk to them every week, and it's the cancer thing over and over again. Where could those people go to find you and to get help if they have cancer or they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Well, right now I send out a kit of information to the people that contact me, and it's mostly for educational purposes. I am not a physician; I'm a professor, so I cannot treat patients. I cannot tell anybody what to do or what not to do. I can only give them educational material. They make decisions as to what they want to do or what not to do. We have submitted a very comprehensive treatment protocol with my MD colleagues to publication. It's a how-to manual on using metabolic therapy for managing brain cancer. But the issue, of course, is it would be effective in managing almost any cancer because they're all very much the same. They can't live without glucose and glutamine. That's what commonality of all cancers. People always say cancer is 100 different diseases. No, it's not. It's a singular disease of energy metabolism. And I have yet to be shown any cancer cell in any kind of an organ that can survive without glucose and glutamine. So we really know what their Achilles weakness is. They can't survive without fermentable fuels, period. And that becomes a very solvable problem now. So, but a lot of people don't know that, and nor does or if they do know it, they don't like to talk about it.
Right.
But I can give information like that. And when the protocol, if it gets published, and I'm hoping it does, then you can give that to patients and they can take it to their physicians. Any person licensed to practice medicine, whether you're an oncologist or not, can help cancer patients wade through what they need to do on how to implement this. And of course, if oncologists would like to get on board, they certainly can do this because that's what they are supposedly trained to do. But it's coming. Metabolic therapy is on its way. Okay, people can either get on the wagon and start recognizing this, or they can get out of the way, because if people want to live and they don't want to be poisoned and irradiated to make themselves healthy. So metabolic therapy offers an alternative, a biologically sound-based alternative to the toxic, mutilating, poisoning strategies that we currently call the standard of care. So it's coming. I mean, I can sit here and talk, but it's coming. People want it. It works, and it's gonna be the new standard of care. I just don't know how long it's going to take for the system to make the necessary adaptations to recognize this.
Well, listen, I can tell you this, just to do a little callback from earlier in the show, Jonestown, Guyana. I drank the Kool-Aid on this a long time ago. By the way, folks, don't drink Kool-Aid. It's full of sugar. But yeah, I'm a Kool-Aid drinker when it comes to it. And here I am 17 plus years down the road, cancer-free. In one experiment, but I'll let you guys know. I've always said whenever my cancer comes back, I'll be on this podcast saying it's back. And here's what I'm doing to push it back into remission again. Dr. Seyfried, stay on the line because we have to let this upload. So we'll talk for a minute. I want to ask you a couple of things anyway. Folks, if you like what's going on here, before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com, click through the banner. It puts a little coal on the fire, gets our train down the track. It helps other people find this show. Also, rate and review. Doesn't cost you a thing to do either one of those two things, rate and review. Also, go check out everything Dr. Thomas Seyfried was talking about during this podcast. As I said, I'm a Kool-Aid drinker on it, and you will be too. So on behalf of Dr. Thomas Seyfried, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.